What's going on? My name's Matt. Some call me the Scotian Canadian. Welcome to your 2019-2020 Montreal Canadiens full in-depth season preview. Last year, around this time when I was making my season preview video, I was fired up. I was sick and tired of the media telling us, people telling us that the Canadiens were no good, that they were going to finish in the bottom of the league and they needed a rebuild. It was absolutely ridiculous, and I knew for a fact they were going to blow those absurd expectations out of the water. And they did. This year, though, the media and hockey community generally have the Canadiens pegged as a bubble playoff team, a team that's going to fight for a playoff spot. Maybe they'll get in, maybe they won't, and that they're a few years away from being a true Stanley Cup contender. As a Habs fan that prides myself on being objective, I can live with that. That's fine. But I seriously think people are sleeping on what the Montreal Canadiens are capable of right now. A lot can be said about how last season everything kind of needed to go right for the Habs for them to be able to have success, and that is kind of what happened. However, to start the season last year, they had to fight and claw through Captain Shea Weber's injury, and during that time frame, Carey Price was also day-to-day for a little while, and Antti Niemi got a few starts. And despite that, they were able to get through those first couple months of the season. A lot of comeback wins, scoring a lot of goals. It was a very impressive start to the season for the Canadiens last year. They managed to stay within playoff contention until their number one defenseman and captain returned. And a big reason for that was the play of Jeff Petrie, Noah Juleson, and a collective effort from the D-Corps, as well as Max Domi, Jonathan Drouin, and that line of Gallagher, Tatar, and Deneau carrying the team in terms of offense and goal scoring. After Shea Weber returned, they didn't deal with too many injuries, some day-to-day ones here and there, and a bunch of guys had career years and young players took steps forward in their development. This might make people think that last year was a one-off and things won't go right again for the Canadiens this season, but I do not think that's the case. Last year, as a young team, the Canadiens took a step forward, not only as individuals, but especially as a group. And because the majority of the Canadiens core are in their mid-20s, this is a step forward that the experts should have expected. Now, I'm here to tell you that the Canadiens have not finished improving. It is not a coincidence that this group played their best hockey at the end of the season last year, going 7-2-1 in their last 10 games as they got more and more comfortable together throughout the season. Now, with all that said, guys, I am nervous. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited. Unbelievably excited. Hockey is back. I can't express how much I cannot wait to see our guys back on the ice in action. But I am nervous. This is an important season for the Canadiens, a young team looking to take another step forward and get into the playoffs. And you know what? I think the main reason why I'm so nervous is that the Canadiens aren't facing immediate adversity to start the season. Last year, with Shea Weber out the first couple months, all the players on the team knew. Everybody knew they had to up their game to survive that couple months. And I feel like that was a big reason in what propelled Montreal forward at the beginning of the year last year, having all of those guys come together. So this season, no immediate adversity, but at the end of the day, I don't even know why I'm nervous. This team has one of the best leadership groups in the entire league and one of the best captains in the league. That is going to go a long way in getting these guys started for the season. And from what I can tell, this whole group is using that bitter taste of missing the playoffs by a couple points last year to motivate them to work incredibly hard to get there this year. So along with that, another extremely competitive camp is what's going to propel this team forward at the beginning of the season. And we've already seen how incredibly intense training camp has been just in the first couple days. The Habs are a team that don't miss the playoffs often. However, we've missed in the last 3 of 4 years. So now it's time we get in, not only to compete for the Stanley Cup, but to get these young guys experience in the postseason where it's a completely different game of puck. Getting there is going to be insanely difficult. The Atlantic Division is absolutely stacked, and a bunch of teams in our division made some impressive improvements throughout the offseason. Whereas the Canadiens, in a way, kind of stood pat, or the moves they were trying to make in the offseason didn't quite work out. That doesn't mean the Canadiens are going to take a step back, though. They're a young team with prospects ready to make the jump into the NHL, and I actually think the fact that there wasn't significant turnover in that locker room this offseason will actually be an extreme strength for this group. And Marc Bergevin filled key roles in the offseason that will have a direct impact on team results. The addition of Keith Kinkaid gives the Habs an experienced veteran backup goaltender who has played a significant amount of games in the last few years. Last year wasn't his best, but you could say that about the majority of the New Jersey Devils team. But the year prior, he had a career year, played 41 games, and maintained a .913 save percentage, and was a big reason why New Jersey made the playoffs. Having Kinkaid will seriously help the Habs manage Carey's workload. We do not want him starting nearly 70 games again this year. Kinkaid is a clear upgrade over Antti Niemi, who struggled throughout the season last year. And I also think the Canadiens' decor is better than New Jersey's, so I believe Keith Kinkaid could really thrive in Montreal in the role that he's going to be given, and working with Stefan Waite, our goaltending coach. Also, the addition of Ben Chiarot is an upgrade over Jordie Benn. And no harm, no foul with Jordie Benn either. I was a big fan of his. He is a quality bottom pair defenseman in the NHL. I'm going to miss him. I thought he was a great teammate and a great Montreal Canadien. Now, a big reason why I say Ben Chiarot is an upgrade over Jordie Benn is because he is a big, physical, left-handed defenseman. Now, Jordie Benn is also a left-handed defenseman, but he prefers to play on the right, and that's where he spent most of the season last year, which left the Habs lacking a physical presence on that left side of the ice. That will no longer be the case. Ben Chiarot is a big body. He steps up, crushes guys, and he defends well in front of the net and retrieves pucks well in the corners. Now, he is a pure shutdown defenseman, and any offense you get from him is, of course, a bonus, kind of similar to Jordie Benn as well. I'm thinking Ben Chiarot is going to play with Jeff Petrie. I think their roles will complement each other very well. However, I doubt he'll be permanently paired with him. And I could see him playing on the bottom pair, 5-on-5, maybe with Folin or Juleson. And also at the end of games with Weber to close out games, and of course on the penalty kill with Weber as well. The Canadiens also added Nick Cousins as a depth player, but keep in mind, this was a guy that in junior had a 88-point season and a 108-point season, if I'm not mistaken, in his last couple years. So he has some serious offensive talent. He's also typically a point-per-game player in the AHL. He's 26 years old, entering what should be the best hockey years of his life. This is a great depth piece for the Canadiens. It'll be fun to keep an eye on him, and I hear he's also a major shit disturber. Can't get enough of that. Now that's about it for additions for the Canadiens this year, but keep in mind they extended Nate Thompson, who joined us after the trade deadline last year. He's a veteran fourth line center. He was a great addition for us on the penalty kill last year, as well as a weapon for Claude Julien in the faceoff dot. And one thing I noticed about him last year, or I wasn't anticipating, was he was a lot faster of a skater, especially in a straight line, than I figured he'd be. He got a few different breakaways last year, and that wasn't necessarily what I was expecting from a guy like Nate Thompson. He had a really, really good offseason. He has a great attitude coming into camp. He'll be a leader in our locker room, and that's another massive positive with a player like this on your team. The Habs also extended Jordan Weal, and he had a clear impact on the Canadiens' power play at the end of the season last year. I'm very interested to see what he'll bring to the team. He's also a guy who had very strong years in junior offensively, so he has that offensive skill, and he's getting older and more experienced as a player in his mid-20s. So also another guy I'm looking forward to watching at the beginning of the season this year. That all may seem lackluster to some. However, the key to the Montreal Canadiens' success this year is going to be the same as last year. We're going to rely on our young core and our young new NHLers to take another step forward in the right direction, as well as possible additions that could help this team from our prospect pool of Nick Suzuki or Ryan Poehling, 2 first-round picks, as well as other guys in our pool ready to make that jump, guys like Josh Brook or Cale Fleury, for example, on defense. Cale Fleury is a young two-way defenseman who made his transition into the pros last year. He played for Laval and he made that transition look seamless. He believes he is ready to make the jump into the NHL, while Josh Brook is the Canadiens' most offensively gifted defense prospect. He also made his transition into the pros at the end of last year after completely lighting up the WHL, getting 75 points from the back end, the most by any defenseman in that league. He was also a major standout at camp last year, and he's already looking like a standout at camp this year. He could be a dark horse to win a spot on the Montreal Canadiens D-Corps, and he would immensely help our power play. As for Poehling, I think due to the Canadiens' depth at center with Danault, Domi, and Kotkaniemi, it's weird to say. I think they're locks to be the Habs' top three centers at this point, unless maybe Kotkaniemi takes a step back, but I highly doubt it. This guy's bulked up in the offseason. He looks ready to go. He's a professional. He's a mature young kid. So I'm thinking those three are their locks for the top three centers. That kind of only leaves the fourth line C spot for Ryan Poehling. So my guess is he'll either have to play left wing to start his NHL career, or he'll start the season in Laval, getting upwards of 18 minutes a night, playing on the first line, playing on all units, PK, power play. Spend some time with Joel Bouchard, get that work ethic instilled in him, and use it as an opportunity to get comfortable in professional hockey, as this is his first full season in the pros. Poehling has serious potential as an NHL center, though, even as soon as this year. He's played against men in university for the last few years, and he is physically mature enough to play in the NHL right now. His defensive game is really strong, and he continues to get better offensively. Now, I will say that I don't think Habs fans should put too much stock into the last game of the year last year, where he scored 4 goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would say it's unrealistic to think of Ryan Poehling becoming a 20 goal scorer in the NHL right away. Even though 20 may seem like not much for a guy who scored 4 in one game. But he is typically known offensively as a playmaker with a great skater, dynamic rushes through the neutral zone, and crisp passes. Obviously, he has a great shot as well, but typically in university, he was more of a playmaker and two-way forward. So just rein back a little bit on his ability to be a frontline goal scorer. Last year in the NCAA, Ryan Poehling had 8 goals and 23 assists for 31 points in 36 games. Now, Suzuki, on the other hand, as long as he has a strong camp, he could make the Montreal Canadiens, and not because he's more ready than Ryan Poehling, but I would say because the Montreal Canadiens' depth at right wing isn't necessarily the greatest right now, especially in terms of potentially elite offensive skill. Trading Andrew Shaw away also makes me wonder if the Montreal Canadiens see something in a guy like Nick Suzuki, that if maybe they see that he could be ready to play a top 9 role in the NHL. And Nick Suzuki's stats in his last year in junior were incredible. In 56 games, he had 34 goals and 60 assists for 104 points. Then in the playoffs, he was lights out. In 24 games, he had 42 points. While Suzuki himself, and probably the Canadiens too, eventually envision him as a center, a stint at right wing to start his NHL career would not hurt at all. It would actually really help him out getting comfortable in the pros, and it would really help the Habs filling a role on that right side of the ice. Suzuki does project to be a more offensively impactful player in the NHL than Ryan Poehling, but until he does that, we do not know for sure. However, Suzuki's defensive game is also really strong, which could help him make a case for a spot in the NHL. Now, both Nick and Ryan need to have incredibly strong training camps to even get a sniff of the NHL. And I think they're going to do that, and the decisions that the Canadiens are going to have to make are probably going to be really difficult. That's it for part 1 of your full Montreal Canadiens 2019-2020 season preview. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Scotian Canadian. Keep an eye out for parts 2 and 3. They are coming very soon. Go Habs, go, baby!